Welcome to this special training, the ultimate guide to acing any job interview. Now let's get started. Sooner or later, everyone must face the daunting task of interviewing for a job. Whether it's for just a job to keep your bills paid, or if it's the dream job you've always wanted, there are many things that you have to remember before you can get that job that you so desire. Most people assume that the most important part of a job interview is showing up well-groomed, but there is more to it than that. Everything that you could ever want may be riding on your behavior at a job interview. The smallest thing can mean the difference between your having a new job or you're still pounding the pavement trying to score a new interview. It is common knowledge that it is generally the smallest detail that causes people to fail a job interview. The fact that you can score an interview at all shows that you already have the right stuff for the job. However, scoring the interview is merely the first step in the journey to getting the job of your dreams. This training is your comprehensive guide to winning that job that you so crave. You will have all of the knowledge required to get your body through that door and ace any interview. In this training, you will learn how to prepare for the interview so that you're at your best for it, how to conduct yourself during the interview, the do's and don'ts of any interview, closing the interview as a winner, common interview questions, questions that you should ask your interviewer, the post-interview follow-up strategy, plus lots more. How to get the interview. Scoring the interview for the job that you want doesn't have to be rocket science. Sometimes you can score that interview by simply making a phone call. There are many ways that people go about trying to get an interview. The methods of achieving one vary by company. It is best to know what the company's application process is before taking your first step. Generally, when a company is hiring, they post an ad in the newspaper or an online job bank. How to contact them is usually included in the ad as well. You don't want to email a resume to a company that is requesting that you walk in with your resume. You don't want to call a company that requires a faxed resume, etc. Ignoring their initial contacting information will guarantee that you will not get that interview because you have already proven that you can't follow simple directions. Sometimes you can get a job lead from a friend before the job has been posted. If this is the case, you may be able to ask your friend to give the employer your resume and cover letter. If your friend doesn't actually work where the lead came from, you can try calling about the position and asking what the application procedure is. There are 4 general methods of applying for a job, and they are 1. Sending a resume, 2. Emailing your resume, 3. Faxing your resume, and 4. Walking in with your resume. Sending a resume. Some companies prefer that you mail in your resume. For this type of approach, it is best to include a cover letter with your resume. The cover letter is a basic letter that describes the position that you are interested in and a few details of your qualifications and skills. It is basically your lead-in to your resume. Before writing your cover letter, you should know to whom the letter is to be addressed. You never want to begin a cover letter with "Dear Sir" or "Madam," or "To whom it may concern," if you can possibly avoid it. It shows that you have not prepared and done your research into the company, and that you are not looking for a specific position with their company, but any job that you can get your hands on. Basically, it is disrespectful to your prospective employer. Emailing your resume. Emailing resumes is becoming a commonplace way for recruiters to get resumes. Most companies offer this method as an alternative to the others. However, there are a few tips on how you should go about it. You should attach your resume as a Word document or PDF file. These are the most common formats and what most companies will accept. The subject line should read your name and the position you are applying for. For example, Smith, John, clerical position in brackets. This makes it easy for the recruiter to know who the email is from and what it pertains to. It also assures that your email will be read. Sometimes there are specific methods for addressing an emailed resume. Some companies have certain subject line requirements, so be sure to follow them. If your company wants you to paste your resume in the email, don't send an email with an attachment, because then your email will be deleted right away. Faxing your resume. Again, you will need to include a cover letter when you fax your resume. If you are not using your own fax machine, be sure to include your proper contact information. The rules for your cover letter are the same as for mailing your resume. Walking in with your resume. For this type of application procedure, you will want to dress appropriately. You would want to dress just like you would for an interview. Companies usually ask you to do this if you are going to be working directly with customers. They ask for a walk-in because they want to get a look at your grooming habits right away. Sometimes a walk-in will have the employer giving you a brief interview on the spot to see if they will require a formal interview later. So be on your best and most appropriate behavior. Also, walk-ins do not require you to bring in a cover letter with your resume. Your appearance is kind of like your cover letter. Sometimes you will be requested to fill out an application form as well. Smile and be polite, no matter who you are talking to. That could be the difference between getting an interview and just taking an extra trip for nothing. Telephoning for an interview. It is not particularly common anymore for companies to ask you to call them for an interview. That is usually saved for jobs that include sales or jobs that are not so easily applied for by the other methods. Telephoning for an interview is a bit common when a company requires that you be on the phone a lot. It gives them a feel for the quality and the personality of the person on the phone. When interviewing for a job over the phone, always speak in a clean and clear manner. Be polite and prepared to answer any questions that may be asked of you. If you are asked your experience or previous work experience, be prepared to answer quickly and explain how long you have been doing that type of work and give a brief description of your duties. Preparing for the interview. Once you get the call for the interview, the next thing you have to do is prepare for it. You can never over-prepare for an interview. The more prepared you are, the harder it will be to make mistakes. It is best to prepare yourself emotionally as well as intellectually for an interview. Giving a great interview is not as hard as some may think, but not as easy as others do either. Here are a few things that must be done in order to prepare for your next interview. Remember, during an interview, you are a salesman. You are there to sell yourself to your prospective employer. You want to market yourself in the most interesting way possible. Great preparation for the interview is your best bet. A salesman who is knowledgeable, friendly, and positive always gets the close. Do your research. It doesn't matter how much experience or knowledge you have about the position that you are trying to get in a company if you don't have a clue who the company is or what they do. It is disastrous to enter into an interview and not be able to tell your interviewer what their company is about. How else are you going to tell them why you feel that you would be a good addition to their company? A good and less time-consuming way to get to know about a company is to look up their website. You can get all of the general knowledge about them that way, including the names of key people and their job titles. There will be more on that in a minute. You should sift through most of their pages, including the pages that show samples of their work or products. You can also look them up in media reports if there are any. Read the articles about them and soak in as much information as possible. Another thing that would be nice to do is to check out the surrounding area around the company. It makes for a nice way to break up the interview. You could make a comment about a particular monument or vacation spot nearby. A more clever way to get a little extra information about the company is to call them on the phone and ask general questions. without referring to yourself as a potential employee. It's a nice way to get the goods on upcoming promotions and things like that. Know your contact. When called for an interview, ask to whom you will be speaking. It's nice to be able to greet your interviewer by name at the beginning of the interview without first being told who they are. It shows that you are on top of things and have prepared beforehand. You will also want to do some research on the person who will be conducting your interview. Learn what they do for the company and try to get some samples of their work or achievements in the company. If you know which department you're going to work in, you may want to get the names of your potential colleagues and superiors prior to the interview as well. This way you can get some information about their roles in the company and the types of work that they have done. Mention some of the things you learn about your potential colleagues in the interview and say how much you're looking forward to working with them in the future. If you can, give an example of their work so that you will appear more sincere and interested in the company. Practice your responses. It is best, if you are prone to nervousness, to practice giving your responses to the questions that may be asked of you. A list of the most common questions will be given later on in the training. You should practice your wording and the tone of voice that you plan to use. Try to keep your responses as brief as possible, but with as much detail as you can include. When you're trying to work out the best responses to the interviewer's questions, you'll also want to practice the art of getting your nerves under control, as well as ridding yourself of any other odd habits you may have while talking, like expressing yourself with your hands. Practice answering your interview questions with a friend. Get his or her opinion about your delivery and gestures. Perhaps your friend will have some nice insights for you to use during the real interview. Dress the part. Pick out your outfit the day before your interview. You want to make sure that your clothes do not have any wrinkles or stains on them. Pick an outfit that best suits the type of job that you are applying for. If you are going to work in an office setting, you should dress conservatively. Soft earth tones are best for women. Try to avoid miniskirts and shirts that show too much skin. A nice dark suit is good for a man. Of course, if you are planning to work outdoors or in an artistic environment, you can dress a little more casually. Just be certain to avoid wearing denim jeans, oversized clothing, and undersized clothing. Women should try to avoid wearing too much makeup as well. It gives the wrong impression. Even in the hotter seasons, you should not wear sandals or gym shoes to an interview. It sends an unprofessional message. The same goes for hats and other accessories. Get organized. Make sure that all of the things that you will need for the interview are prepared the day before. Make a checklist of the things you'll need, if you have to. You should always have an extra resume handy during the interview. You should also bring a notepad with you to take notes during the interview if needed. Only write down the important things that you think you will need to remember. If you have a business card, have one handy. It makes it easy for the interviewer to contact you later, and it also shows that you are professional and may help the employer to remember your name. How should I act? There are many things that you can do that can take some of the pressure off during an interview. The way you behave is one of the most important. It's not all in the words that come out of your mouth, but often has a lot to do with the mannerisms that you use. Interviewers are not just wondering if you are skilled enough for the job, they are often wondering if you would fit in well with your co-workers. Your personality is a big part of your interview and can make all the difference. Here are some of the little things that you should pay particularly close attention to during an interview. You do not want to be chewing gum or breath mints during your interview. You also don't want to speak in slang during your interview either. It is unprofessional and rude. Show confidence. You cannot enter into an interview with a defeatist attitude. You cannot mope or exude too much placidity in your manner. It is not inviting and does not give the impression of a person that you would want to face every day. You want to let your interviewer know that you are equipped to perform well at your job without alienating other workers. You should point out your accomplishments in your field while remaining somewhat humble. List your accomplishments in a matter-of-fact way without going into too much detail. I know this sounds repetitive, but this point cannot be overemphasized. Understand that body language plays a large part in exuding confidence to others. Sit up straight, practice good posture, and keep your head up. Keep a positive attitude. You should always try to smile and keep a positive outlook during your interview. If you're hearing something that doesn't sound good to you, don't frown and look disgruntled. Just keep a slight smile on your face until it is time for you to say something. Then approach your interviewer with your questions or concerns when the time is appropriate. Maintain eye contact. Keeping eye contact with your interviewer is very important, especially when one of you is speaking to the other. If you are looking around the room or at the items on the interviewer's desk, you will appear uninterested. Just imagine what you would be thinking if you were speaking to him and he was looking all over the room. You would probably think that you already lost the interview. 7 body languages you should avoid. We've touched on this a little bit, but you should mind some of the common errors that many people make when they are speaking to others. I've listed some of the common things that you should avoid when sitting through an interview. Avoid fidgeting while speaking to your interviewer. It shows a lack of self-confidence. Avoid speaking while using overly expressive hand gestures. It is distracting. Avoid biting your lips in between sentences. It gives the impression that you are making things up. Do not sit with your arms crossed because it makes you appear standoffish. Do not shrug your shoulders when asked a question that you are unsure of the answer to. Instead, take a second to think about your response. Shrugging your shoulders gives the impression that you don't know the answer. Don't answer with nods and head shakes. Use your words to answer questions. Get plenty of sleep the night before the interview. You don't want to yawn in front of the interviewer. He will think that you are expressing boredom. Your first impression. First impressions can be a hard thing to get past in any situation. During an interview, you want to give the best first impression that you can. There are many small things you can do to assure that you give the best impression possible. They are as follows. You can never be too polite to the person who directs you to your waiting area when you're waiting to be interviewed. A small gesture like asking how they are doing can work wonders for you when you leave the building later. When waiting to be interviewed, sit properly and behave as if everyone passing you by is your potential interviewer. They just might be. Smile at people as much as possible. Do not act impatient or bored, even if you are. It sends the wrong message. Some interviewers will keep you waiting just to see how you handle yourself. Greet your interviewer with a firm handshake and a smile. Remain standing until your interviewer asks you to be seated. It is simply polite and shows proper etiquette. Again, dress according to the type of job that you are applying for. Show yourself to be well organized by having all the things you need for the interview. While waiting, do not eat or drink anything. Don't chat on your cell phone while waiting for your interviewer. It makes you look distracted. The do's of acing an interview. There are quite a few things that you should do and not do during an interview that could make the whole thing a lot easier for both you and the interviewer. I have listed them briefly in the list that follows. Do arrive on time, or preferably at least 10 minutes early. Do refer to the interviewer by name. Do smile and use a firm handshake. Do stay alert and act interested throughout. Do maintain eye contact at all times during the interview. Do make all comments in a positive manner. Do speak clearly, firmly, and with authority. Do accept any refreshment offered. Do promote your strengths. Don'ts of any interview. Don't be overly aggressive or egotistical. Don't spend too much time talking about money. Don't act uninterested in the company or the job. Don't act defensively when questioned about anything. Don't speak badly about your past colleagues or employers. Don't answer questions with only a yes or a no. Don't make excuses for any bad points in your work history. Don't excuse yourself halfway through the interview, even if you have to use the restroom. Don't ask for coffee or refreshments. Closing the interview. Once you have run the bases of the interview, it is still important that you end the interview well. The hard part is over, and now all that is left is for you to close out the interview in the same winning manner. Wait until your interviewer or interviewers stands up or requests that you do. Say your goodbyes. Thank the interviewer or interviewers for taking the time to see you. Offer another firm handshake and ask when you might know when you might expect to hear from them about their decision. Quick overview and extra tips that will help you ace your interview. With all of the information that was given in this training, you would think that you've learned everything there is to know about acing an interview. However, there are still a few more tips that you should know, and a few more helpful hints. You need to 1. Market your skills and related experience in the field that you're applying for. Be sure to do it in a positive way. 2. Researching the company before your interview is a good way to know where you would fit into it. It lets the employer know that you really want to be a part of the company, too. 3. Bring your list of questions with you in a folder with the company's name on it so that you don't forget them. You should also keep your extra resumes in that folder. 4. You want to describe your weaknesses as strengths. For example, saying that you are over-enthusiastic about performing at your best. 5. Since many interviewers ask you what your biggest fault may be, you should pick a fault that is actually a good thing. Try saying, "I don't take on projects that I can't give 110% on." 6. Let your interviewer bring up the topic of salary first. 7. Don't volunteer your personal opinions to your interviewer about any subject unless you are asked. 8. Try to establish a good rapport with your interviewer. Be casual but professional, and most importantly, be yourself. Common interview questions. Every interview consists of the interviewer asking you a great number of questions. Many of them are standard questions that every interviewer asks. I've listed the most common questions that you're most likely to encounter during an interview to help you get a handle on them before you go to the interview. It's always good to be prepared. By listening to these common questions that interviewers ask, you will have a leg up on the competition. You will also have time to prepare your answers so that you don't get stumped. So here is your key to acing a job interview. 1. Tell me something about yourself. Remember, say something positive. 2. How do you handle stressful situations? 3. How do you deal with criticism and stress? 4. What is your definition of success? 5. Why do you think that you would fit in with this company? This is where your research comes in handy. 6. Have you ever been fired, and why? 7. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? 8. Do you prefer to work on your own or as part of a team? 9. Why are you interested in working for this company? 10. How would you handle a difference of opinion with your colleagues or superiors? 11. Why should I or we hire you? Common questions when applying for your first job after college graduation. 1. Tell us or tell me what your most rewarding college experience was. 2. What extracurricular activities did you participate in? 3. What have you learned in college that applies directly to this job? 4. How have you prepared yourself for the transition from college to the workplace? 5. Are you going to graduate school? If so, do you plan to continue working as well? 6. How do you plan to manage graduate school and working? 7. Did you get any hands-on experience in college? 8. How do you feel that college has prepared you for this job? 9. Have you ever done an internship that helped to prepare you for this type of work? 10. What do you think is the best asset that you could bring to the company? Now let's discuss questions that you should ask your interviewer. Just as you will be fielding questions from your interviewer, it is best to ask a few of your own. It shows that you are genuinely interested in working there and that you have some concerns of your own. It also shows that you feel relatively certain that this is the place for you. Asking the right questions to your prospective employer will show him or her that you are serious about your efforts to work for their company and that you are an organized individual. You should steer clear of asking any personal questions or any questions that are not directly job-related. If you wish, you may jot down some of the answers that you are given for reference later on. Keep your questions simple and polite. Make sure that you are asking direct questions about the job or the work environment. Here are some examples of questions that you should ask your prospective employer. 1. Why is this position available right now? 2. How many times has this position been filled in the past 5 years? 3. What should the new person do that is different from what the last person who had this position did? 4. What would you most like to see done in the next 6 months? 5. What are the most difficult problems that this job entails? 6. How much freedom will I have in the decision-making process in this job? 7. What are my options for advancement? 8. How has this company succeeded in the past? 9. What changes do you envision in the near future for this company? 10. What do you think constitutes success in this job? Questions employers cannot ask. Just as there are many questions that an interviewer can ask, there are many that he cannot ask. Some questions are illegal to ask. Many people don't realize that there are questions that are off limits to employers. That is why I felt that it was important to include them. When or if you do encounter some of these questions, there are ways that you can choose to respond to them. Since some people would probably answer them, it's good for you to know that you don't have to answer these kinds of questions. You can simply ask how those questions pertain to the job you're applying for. Here is a list of the questions that are illegal for an interviewer to ask. 1. Questions about your age are not allowed during an interview because it should not be a factor in the hiring decision. 2. Questions about your marital status are inappropriate and can easily be mistaken for sexual harassment. This also applies to questions such as whether or not you have children, your child care plans, etc. This type of question also includes any other aspect of your personal life that should not affect your chances of being hired. 3. Questions about your personal health are also off-limits. 4. Questions about your ethnicity should not be asked by an interviewer or answered by the person being given the interview. 5. Your sexual preference cannot be a factor in your chances of being hired either. This type of question should not be asked. 6. Whether or not you have disabilities is a question that should not be asked either. 7. Your arrest record is information that doesn't have to be answered. All an interviewer can ask you is whether you have ever been convicted of a crime. They cannot ask you what for or how many times. 8. Basically, personal information cannot be asked for by an interviewer. It is illegal and you do not have to respond. The post-interview follow-up. Now that the interview is over, the hard work is over, but you still have to follow up on the interview later. Sending a thank you note is the best way to start. The thank you note should convey your thanks for their time and consideration in seeing you. If you haven't heard from the employer within a week, you should call the office to ask if they have reached a decision yet. This is not being pushy, it shows your enthusiasm and persistence. If they haven't reached a decision, ask when you might expect to hear from them. If they don't give an answer, try again in another week, and so on. What employers are looking for. When an employer decides to conduct an interview with you, there are certain things that they are looking for from you. Naturally, you are likely to focus on these things during an interview, but you should remember all of the tips in this training, because following these tips is what's going to make the interviewers see all these things in you. Since everybody wants to have a leg up when it comes to an interview, it naturally seemed to be appropriate to let you in on what the employers are evaluating you on during an interview. So here is that list. Your enthusiasm. Employers want to know that you are willing and eager to be a part of their company. Being fully stocked with knowledge about the company is a surefire way to show your enthusiasm. Your ability to speak clearly. If you come into an interview mumbling and speaking slang, a prospective employer will not see you as a professional. Showing your teamwork skills. During your interview, you should show an example of your ability to work as part of a team. Leadership skills. You should show your leadership abilities by approaching your interview with an offensive mindset. Problem-solving ability. Employers need to know that you can handle yourself when a problem arises. Work-related experience. You definitely want to show that you have some experience in the field already, so that the employer knows that you will not be overwhelmed. Community involvement. Employers love to see that you have done volunteer work. It shows that you take pride in your community and are willing to be a team player. Company knowledge. Again, employers like to see that you have done your research about their company. It shows that your interest in working for them is sincere. Flexibility. Employers want to know that you are able to go with the flow. It proves that they can depend on you later. Ambition and motivation. Ambitious people are generally motivated enough to make great improvements in the company as they are working their way up the ladder. Ambition usually means more money for the company. People skills. Your ability to get along with others is very important to an employer. They need to know that you won't ruffle any feathers when you are hired. Professional appearance. Nobody wants a slob working in their office. Be certain to dress appropriately for the job that you are applying for. Ability to multitask. This is getting to be a very necessary skill in the workplace. Most days you will be required to multitask at work. Even if you are not, Employers need to know that you can do it without freaking out on them. Facility with computers. These days, just about every company in the world is running on computers. The ability to work a computer with at least a minimal amount of skill is important. It is best to keep a leg up on the most common office software like Microsoft Office, Microsoft Outlook, QuickBooks, and Salesforce.com. Reliability. Employers want dependable and reliable people to work for them. Your ability to arrive on time is a good place to start when trying to prove that you possess this quality. How employers evaluate your performance. Employers are generally monitoring and evaluating you on 3 skill sets during an interview. Those 3 skill sets can easily be broken down into these sections. Content skills. These are the skills that are directly related to performing a specific job in your profession. You get these skills by learning your craft in an accredited school through specialized training, work experience, attaining a degree, and internships. This shows an employer that you have acquired all of the knowledge that you will need to perform your job efficiently. If you do not have these types of skills, you can simply express that you are looking into specialized training and/or would be willing to start. It may not be exactly what the employer is looking for, but it shows that you have initiative. Functional skills. These are the skills that reflect your ability to work with others and how you process and evaluate data. This is where an employer decides whether or not you are a team player. You can display this skill by displaying your past employment record and accomplishments that are directly job-related. Generally, an employer will get an idea of your ability to work with others based on your reasons for leaving previous jobs, such as whether or not you were fired before. If you have been fired before, don't lie about it and do not act bitter about it when discussing the reason. This will not benefit you in the end. Be forthcoming and sincere. Express that it was a learning experience for you and tell them what you learned from it. That reflects well on your temperament. Adaptive skills. This refers to your general personality and temperament. It also covers your self-management skills. During your interview, the employer will be evaluating you on your general ability to get along with him or her. Your general personality traits are monitored during the interview. When faced with a difficult question, you do not want to get defensive or angry. Just take a few seconds to think about what you should say, rather than saying something you will regret. If you must, simply explain that you are a little nervous, so that you can buy a few extra seconds to answer. You want to appear at ease, or as much so as you can, during your interview. You want the employer to think that you anticipated everything that he or she was going to say. Even if you are terrified of giving the wrong answer, do not let them see you sweat. Final review. By now you have learned everything you need to know before you enter into an interview. During this training, you have acquired the skills needed to get and ace any interview that you go on. You have made the right move in choosing this training as your guide. As promised, you are going to approach your next interview with a leg up on the competition. By now you have learned how to prepare for the interview, the best way to behave during an interview, how to make a great first impression, how to dress for success, how to close an interview, what questions you will most likely be asked during an interview, what questions you should ask during an interview, what questions cannot be asked during an interview, how to follow up on your interview, and what specifically employers are looking for from you. You have learned everything you need to know in this guide, and probably a little more than that. Don't worry. If you have listened to and used all of the information in this training, you have increased your chances of getting that job by 100%. If you are due to have an interview, you've already learned how to ace the interview just by listening to this training, so relax and go get that job. Welcome to this special training, How to Write a Rockstar Resume, which is also known as a CV, Curriculum Vitae, that secures you an interview spot. My name is Amy, and I will be walking you through this training. Now, let's get started. In this training, you'll learn how to write a rockstar resume without a struggle, how to transform your resume and sell yourself to a potential employer, the key qualities your potential employer wants to see on your resume, tricks for writing a high-profile resume that secures you an interview, plus lots more. We'll talk about pretty much everything you need to know to write a resume that will blow your potential employer away and get you results. So you might want to turn off your mobile phone and any other devices that might distract your attention. You might be wondering whether this training is for you. This training is designed to address the areas that most job seekers find difficult when it comes to creating a resume that will catch the attention of their potential employers. You might want to ask yourself these questions. Do I struggle with writing my own resume for a potential employer? Where do I start when writing a resume? How should it look? Am I unsure of what to include, elaborate on, and omit? How do I present my information, qualities, and work history in a manner that makes me attractive to my potential employer? Does the thought of even writing a resume scare me? If you have answered yes to any of these questions, then you can rest assured that you are not alone. I've always found it difficult to write the perfect resume, or even a decent one for that matter. I was once in your shoes. For my first job, I would find example resumes and copy those, or just use my own idea of what a resume should look like. This led to some interesting times, and usually did not result in me getting the job that was just right for me. It's important to note that there are a number of different styles of resumes that you can use, and you may find some styles more suited to you than others. This training is a guide intended to provide you with a template for a resume that contains the most important information that your future employer will want to know. More importantly, the techniques you'll learn in this training have worked for me in the past, so I know they'll work for you too. I'm going to explain all of these points and more, and by the time you have finished watching this training, you will know exactly what you need to do to write a killer resume. You can use this guide to write a resume for any job in any industry. As long as you follow my tips, your resume will get you interviews. Remember, a first impression lasts. Let me share this with you. In my first resume, I followed a set template and I didn't question it at all. It had my name in big letters centered at the top of the page, which was good, and my contact details underneath in minuscule font, not so good. It was only years later, when I had successfully used this resume to apply for and get an internship, after undergoing a 3.5-hour assessment as well as an interview, that the inefficiency of this layout was pointed out to me. Why would I want to make my contact details so hard to read? The cold, hard truth about job applications is that people often don't have much time or patience for other people. The first piece of advice I want to impart to you is that you need to write for the employer and try to put yourself in their shoes. Imagine, for example, that you are the owner of your own small business and don't yet have anyone in charge of recruiting new staff. You still have to take care of deliveries, sales, and advertising on your own, so you just want the perfect new recruit to come along and get right to work. You don't have time for long-winded life stories or trying to read somebody's contact details in some tiny font. You want it all there in front of you, served up on a silver platter. When you sit down to write your resume, you need to picture your future employer in your mind. Think about what the organization is all about and write specifically to the organization. Tailor your resume to their business and the role you will play in it. Contrary to popular opinion, it is not just your cover letter that you need to tailor to each job position. Many people believe that resumes are simply a document designed to list your achievements in chronological order and to let people know everything that you have ever done. If you have ever submitted the exact same resume for two completely different job applications, you probably believe this too. This belief is something that needs to be changed. I will elaborate on this point more as we go through this training because it can mean the difference between getting the job and not even getting a second look. When writing your resume, you can use any number of templates or styles. I have provided a template to give you an idea of where to start. This template is the culmination of a fair amount of research on what makes the perfect resume. Such a thing doesn't actually exist, but there are definitely some common themes which most employers would appreciate seeing in a candidate's resume. To begin with, it is useful to have your name in a relatively large font in the top center of the page. This makes it hard to miss and will hopefully help your resume stick in the employer's mind much longer than other resumes with less eye-catching font sizes. When employers skim through resumes, and most, unfortunately, do just skim through them, they know exactly what they are looking for, so the fonts you use obviously won't win them over all by themselves. Just be aware of the fact that presentation is key to creating a favorable first impression. The next set of information to include is your personal details, such as your phone number, address, and email address, in a clear font at the top of the page. If you are an employer thumbing through a pile of resumes, you don't want to have to search the page for a phone number. These details usually go in the top corner of the page or just underneath your name. Find a style that works for you and that is aesthetically pleasing as well. In the job market, you can get a huge head start on your competitors simply by appearing better qualified than they do by using a stylish design and layout. Quick review. Make your resume unique. Make it stand out from the crowd at first glance so that it will entice your employer to read on. Make sure your name is clear and typed in a large font size. Make your contact details easy to read. You need to sell yourself by emphasizing your key strengths. The time when your potential employer is reading your resume really is your time to shine, and it is crucial that you take advantage of this small window of time where the focus is solely on you. However you feel about yourself, and however unsure or embarrassed you may be about doing this, you need to sell yourself. When you apply for a job and send a resume to an employer, you are asking them to pick you from among many other candidates who may be just as appealing as you are. We all know how tough the job market currently is, and has been for a while, and because it may not change for some time, we need to adapt to our surroundings and toughen up. I don't want you to apply for a job and come across like you're ready for a fight, because that really wouldn't go over well. But it is important to realize the gravity of the situation and that you really do need to push yourself ahead of the pack. It's almost a primal feeling. There are more candidates than positions, so you have to give each application your best shot. Are you feeling revved up and ready to go yet? Good! You'll need to, because the first section you should include underneath your name and contact details is your key strengths. A simple section heading saying Key Strengths with about 6 bullet points will suffice, and will give your potential employer a number of reasons why you should get the job right off the bat. As I said, you don't have much time for messing around. You need to cut straight to the chase. On this note, I want to assure you that you need not be alarmed or scared about appearing to be a pushy person on your resume when that is just not you. Once you've passed the first stage of the job application process and are invited in for an interview, You'll be able to speak to your potential employer or recruitment professional and have a much more personal interaction. Your resume is simply a vehicle to make you stand out from the crowd and to move you on to the interview stage. You'll have time to elaborate later, but for now it's vital to just get down to business. So what do I mean by key strengths? As I said, this all depends on the job at hand. Whether you're applying to be a fashion intern or a truck driver will clearly have some influence on the traits that would be useful in your line of work. Refer to the job advertisement and try to demonstrate that you have the desired traits that it outlines. This will also illustrate that you are competent at responding accurately to the requirements of a task and are a good listener. The better the case you can make for yourself, the more quickly your future employer will realize that hiring you is a no-brainer. First of all, it can be useful to include a short section on your career overview or objectives. Do not spend too much time here. The shorter, the better. This is your self-introduction to your potential employer and is the one section where you are able to be the most personal. Writing this section may involve outlining your relevant experience and your understanding of the field you are working in. I see this section as a mini-biography wherein you not only detail your skills, but describe the situations you thrive in and personally enjoy. Examples of a career overview. With 3 years of retail experience, I understand the importance of customer service. Having worked in the manufacturing industry for 20 years, I enjoy working as part of a team and enhancing my relationships with others. Examples of career objectives. I am looking to obtain an ABC position at XYZ company, where I can use and further my management skills and training experience. I am seeking a challenging management position in a sales environment where my 10 years of experience as a sales assistant will help others to reach their targets. We all have strengths and weaknesses, and as adults, it's useful to be aware of them. Even this knowledge is a strength. Here are a few examples which may give you ideas for traits you can mention. Examples of key strengths. Tenacious and committed. Outgoing and friendly. Insightful and adept at communicating with others. These are 3 pairs of strengths which often go hand in hand. You need to identify 4 character traits or skills which you have displayed in your working life. It's important here that you relate the skills back to a real example. For instance, I have demonstrated commitment and responsibility by opening and closing the shop and managing other staff. The more closely you can relate your strength to a relevant experience, the better. As you will learn throughout this training, there are a number of different ways to structure a resume. The introductory career overview or objective section is the one section outlined in this training that is optional. You may not feel comfortable including it, or it may not be necessary for a particular job. If you do use it, be sure to tailor it for each job you apply for and keep it short and sweet. As I've mentioned, how effective your resume is depends heavily on its appearance, and that includes the phrasing of your sentences. Depending on how you word your descriptions of your work, you can either be the top candidate or find yourself sitting at the bottom of the pile. It's all in the wordplay. The trick is to realize what the employers are looking for and to simply give it to them. As I said previously, more isn't always better. Quick review. Summarize your key strengths succinctly and relevantly. Respond succinctly and specifically to the job advertisement. This will illustrate your ability to listen and provide correct information that answers a specific question. Include your career objectives or overview only if you feel comfortable doing so. Keep this section short and relevant to your experience and the position. Understand that this is your time to shine and show how brilliant you are. Think about your most positive traits. Be honest and positive at the same time. Let's talk about your employment history. This may be your first job or your 50th, but no matter where you are in your life, you can and definitely should make the most of this chance to talk yourself up. It really is quite fun, and therein lies the key to writing a great resume. As long as you enjoy writing it and have some fun with it, you'll come across as genuine and increase your chances of getting hired. The golden rule is, if any work experience on your resume is more than 5 years old, it should no longer be included. Why not? Including things like your 10th grade part-time job, for example, really is no longer relevant. You may think you're promoting yourself, but what you're really expressing is that you're not sure of your current qualifications and prefer instead to cling to the past. Employers do not want that. Start with your most recent job position and work backwards. Again, you need to think like the employer. You may have achieved some brilliant things in your past, but as we all know, our past isn't necessarily our future. We can change a lot within a year or two, and your resume can reflect that. The more up-to-date, the better. Include your job title, company, amount of time spent in the role, and even a sentence about the company to give your employer a brief background. I really do mean one sentence. Any more is overkill. Next, list your key responsibilities. Prioritize the most relevant responsibilities at the top of the list and work down from there. Using bullet points is useful and perhaps even preferred, as it will force you to keep your sentences short and to the point. Examples of key responsibilities. Assisting customers with personalized recommendations and matching products to their needs. Managing staff and organizing the monthly roster. Dealing with money, orders, and invoices. Depending on the job you're applying for, the order in which you should list these responsibilities will differ. For example, if you are in an industry with a heavy emphasis on finance and dealing with money, you would be better off elaborating on those skills rather than your people skills. If you are applying for a front-line customer service job, however, those two sets of skills would be listed the other way around. If you're ever unsure of what to include or where to list a particular responsibility, look over the job advertisement again. Even by simply giving them what they ask for, you are demonstrating your ability to listen. Below your key job responsibilities, you can include a list of key achievements. These are outcomes or experiences that you are proud of and that you had a direct hand in achieving with the role you played. If you haven't been at your job for very long, this can be harder to do, but don't feel the need to pad out this section. List what you have achieved so far, such as Employee of the Month or being put in charge of a certain project. Once again, these seemingly small achievements can allude to a much larger potential. Just because you can't see it right now, it does not mean that your employer won't. Examples of key achievements. Being responsible for coordinating the roster and managing staff over the weekend. Developing confidence in my ability to sell products tailored to customers. Working with others in a professional environment and managing team projects to meet deadlines. Quick review. Your achievements are more important than you may think. Even if you don't think they amount to much, your employer will. Keep your role duties and responsibilities to a minimum. Give a brief outline, but focus more on your achievements. Start with your most recent experience and work backwards. Current information is best. When it comes to your education, how far back do you go? Well, think back to your high school days. Do you remember competing to be at the top of your class and constantly winning every math competition? Or perhaps you were homecoming queen and class president with a wide social circle. We are taught from a very young age to aim high in life, and this often causes some confusion when applying for jobs. Why wouldn't an employer want you if you were at the top of the class in all your subjects? Well, the honest truth is that your school experience is largely irrelevant when you start work. You may have gone through some tough times in high school, but it is important to understand that what you did or didn't achieve in school isn't quite so important now. So, when writing your resume, you may be wondering what you should or shouldn't include from school. Firstly, this depends on your age. If you are still in school, then your school experience is relevant, and you should include your school or college details, as well as your chosen course of study. Any achievements that are relevant to your current situation and the job you're applying for, such as class awards, research grants, or student prizes, should be mentioned. However, if your college days are a distant memory, it is enough to simply put your college's name, your course of study, and the dates. Once you are well out of tertiary education, it is no longer important to include details about things you accomplished in school. It just doesn't matter, and it takes up precious resume room. My rule of anything older than 5 years is out applies here, too. Unless a certain qualification is very relevant to the job at hand, don't include it. If it demonstrates a clear commitment to your industry, however, you may deem it relevant and beneficial. But when you include something from so long ago, it can tell your employer that you haven't done much worthwhile since, and that's not a message that you want to convey. It's important to be proud of your achievements and your current path. If you are studying for a fine arts degree and are applying for a job in fashion, it may not be the perfect fit, but you can work with it and persuade your employer that it will be beneficial to them. For instance, highlighting your creativity, your ability to create something out of nothing, and your commitment to one of your passions can certainly work in your favor. It all depends on your perspective and what you express to your employer. So if you are still studying or have only recently left college, express your achievements with pride. If it has been more than 5 years since you were in school, use examples of your achievements from recent years to illustrate what a great person you are. If you are having trouble thinking of recent examples of your skills, it may be worthwhile to discuss it with a friend or family member. Often we are unable to see the value in our own achievements, and you may not realize how important your experience is until someone has pointed it out to you. Quick review. Only include relevant information. If it's older than 5 years, omit it. Be proud of your achievements and your current situation. If you can relate your course of study to the job you are applying for, go for it. Ask a trusted friend or family member for their opinion about what experiences you should include. Let's move on to personal interests you might want to add to your resume. The interests section is a contentious part of any resume, and once again, relevancy is the key. Some schools of thought are completely against including interests in a resume, as they have no bearing on your ability to do the job and may even work against you. Others, however, feel that including your hobbies may personalize you and make you seem more approachable and human. And that is always a good thing when reading through a ton of applications. The way I see it, you need to find a balance between expressing yourself and overstepping the boundaries. For instance, I don't think any employer wants to know about your penchant for collecting cat statues or your enjoyment of water aerobics classes. This is truly TMI, too much information. Absolutely do not include anything illegal, and I would steer clear of any dangerous or thrill-seeking activities too. Although it's important to express yourself and be honest about who you are, it's also important to remember that you are functioning in a professional realm and must act accordingly. Once you are past the initial application stage and reach the interview, it will become much easier to let your true self shine. Giving hints about your personality on your resume is fine, but only as long as those hints lie within the boundaries of professional behavior. So what should you include? Please don't be scared by this list of don'ts. I've just heard too many horror stories of poorly judged and unfortunate inclusions on resumes that have led to terribly embarrassing situations. I do not want this to happen to you. But because you will be working with the company or people who assess your resume, it's valuable to convey an honest and interesting picture of yourself. False advertising never goes over well, and the truth is always so much more interesting anyway. Examples of interests: playing music, travel, writing or blogging, sports. These are simply a few politically correct examples you may wish to include in your interests section. Once again, it is perfectly fine to use bullet points and to keep these to a minimum. This section is purely gratuitous and gives your employer a better idea of you as a person. I advise including it toward the end of your resume, as your hobbies are, unfortunately, not your employer's main interest. But you never know. If you write about your love of stamp collecting and your employer happens to be an avid collector, your interests could do wonders for your job outcome. Quick review. Keep your interests section short and sweet. Be honest about who you are, as it will make you seem more human in what can often be a distant and impersonal experience. Don't include anything illegal. Let's talk about choosing your references. Whom you choose to use as a reference on your resume can really make or break your job application. You may be lucky and have a stack of kindly ex-employers to choose from, or you may be unsure of who to include. Your potential employer will call and speak to your references, so do choose carefully. Think back to all of the professional authority figures you have worked with. It's okay to include volunteer managers or coordinators in this section, as you have most likely worked with them in a professional capacity and demonstrated transferable skills in your volunteer role. You also do not necessarily need to include your direct supervisor if you have worked with numerous bosses. It is very important to choose references with whom you get along well and who have honestly been impressed with your work ethic. To help yourself along, it is important to inform your reference of his or her inclusion on your resume. It is a strange but true fact that many people list references without actually consulting them first. This hinders you in more ways than one. It not only causes your reference some embarrassment, but also does not allow him or her to discuss your strengths in relation to the specific job you have applied for. Plus, it makes you look disorganized to your potential employer. Once again, it all depends on the job. If you list a former volunteer coordinator as a reference for a business role, the skills and experiences they talk about may not be the most fitting, and may not provide the employer with a real sense of security about your position in their workplace. It is helpful to include a variety of references, if possible, to illustrate your competence in a number of roles and across different fields. Do not include a family member or friend, as this will not appear particularly professional. More importantly, it will say something about what you deem appropriate or not as part of your professional life. Your potential employer will be very interested in what your references have to say. If necessary, remind your references, tactfully, of some of the achievements you have mentioned on your resume or that you would like them to discuss. Hint, hint. For your potential employer, talking to your previous manager who has had first-hand professional experience with you is invaluable. There is a great difference between what you write about yourself and what a third-party authority says about your work ethic. Your potential employer will greatly appreciate what your previous employer has to say about you, especially since they may share the same understanding of what is important in a good candidate. Inform your references and then let them take care of talking about how fabulous you are. Quick review. Inform your references about the job you're applying for and give them as much information about your potential employer as possible. Choose your references carefully and make sure they are appropriate. Include a range of references to demonstrate your competence over a range of fields and skills. Never underestimate the importance of providing the right reference. This is really important in improving your job prospects. Someone might be asking, what if I haven't worked before? How do I deal with this when writing my resume? So far we have discussed a number of sections to include in your resume, many of which revolve around previous work or volunteer experience. I know many of you will have held down a job in the past and will not need to watch this section. But for those of you who are new to the workplace or don't feel comfortable including your previous work experience, I want to let you know that this is not the only way to show your suitability for a job. The sections we have previously discussed still apply to you. The only difference is that instead of using examples from work experience, you can discuss your strengths, achievements, and responsibilities, but in a more general context. For example, you can include lines such as, I am an honest worker, or I enjoy being part of a team, which are completely legitimate as resume material and still reflect how you may interact with others in your job role. To be honest, no employer really knows how suitable a candidate may be until they are actually working in the job. What may seem like a good idea or a good candidate on paper may not actually spell success for both employer and employee. Similarly, if you are a candidate with no current work experience, this does not mean that you have no chance at all. If you put together a good resume which you are proud of and present yourself well, who is to say that you wouldn't be the best? It's important to keep in mind that the different jobs you're applying for will require different levels and types of experience. This can work for you because certain jobs will simply require particular personality traits, and the employer will happily train the right candidate. This means that you and the other candidates are all on an even playing field. You may even be ahead of the game. So many employers simply want someone who is motivated, dedicated, and willing to learn. They will do the rest. If you give them this, they will take a chance on you, train you up, and teach you to become a better worker. Also, remember that you have a lot to offer. Just because you may not have the most experience, do not discount what you do have. Everyone has to start somewhere, and even those people who seem like they are a pro, so to speak, at applying for and getting jobs were once inexperienced novices. It is best not to compare yourself, because if you are unsure of yourself already, comparisons and negative self-talk will only make it worse. Trust yourself, and know that the right employer will find you, often when you least expect it. Quick review. A lack of professional experience does not mean a lack of skills. Think outside the box and make the most of your current abilities. Have faith in yourself. You don't know what the competition is like, so there is no reason to assume you're not the best candidate. Tricks to make writing your resume easier for you. You may be watching this and thinking, how am I going to find the time and energy to change my resume every time I apply for a new job? And this is indeed the hard part. It may be that you know yourself well and have no problem writing honestly and succinctly about your strengths and experience. You may even enjoy it. But knowing what to add or remove for each job application is tough and can be exhausting. Have a base copy prepared. I find that having a base resume helps ease the load. Save a copy of a general resume which you can tweak for each application, but never override the original. Think of it as a blueprint to work off of each time. Be sure to tailor each copy for each job application you complete. I know that this may seem like the most arduous task in the world right now, but it's not really that hard. If you keep your blueprint, read the job advertisement, and most importantly, really want the job, you will easily be able to make some small changes that will have a great effect. Choose a nice font in a decent size. This may sound obvious, but little things like these can reveal certain things about your personality that you may not realize. For example, choosing an excessively fancy font or putting the text in a very small size makes a relatively simple job a lot harder for your future employer. If this is how you deal with a simple Word document, how will you handle a role with a high level of responsibility? Research different resume styles. I've designed this guide to help you increase your understanding of what you have to offer an employer and the best way to present this. However, this training is only a guide and should be used only as you see fit. You may prefer to structure your resume in a different way, or may prefer not to include sections that I've talked about, or in this specific order. That's fine. Although I've talked about the importance of being sure of yourself and not comparing yourself to other candidates, it can be useful to take a look at other people's resumes strictly as a learning tool. See what other people do, or don't do, and decide what you like best. Ultimately, your resume is a reflection of you, so you get the final word on what goes on it. Learn to keep your resume short. How many pages should your resume have? I say no more than 2. I know I've labored this point a few times during this training, but the employers do not have much time. This means that both the length of the resume as a whole and the length of each paragraph should be kept to a minimum. Keep your paragraphs short and your sentences shorter. If you can show how fabulous you are in less than 2 pages, that shows another skill that you don't necessarily need to write about. Show, don't tell. Things not to include. Date of birth, unnecessary. Photo, contentious but unnecessary as well. I have great communication skills. Let your writing skills demonstrate this. Employers are not allowed to discriminate against you based on your age or your appearance. But if you include these details willingly, they may subconsciously jump to an unflattering conclusion about the type of person you are. We do not want this, so let your strengths and writing skills speak for themselves. Adding the finishing touches to your resume. It is essential that you proofread your resume. Now that you've finished the bulk of the document, it's time to do a little bit of checking and cleaning up. One of the most important things about your resume is that it makes sense. This may sound surprisingly simple, but people often overlook this fact and wind up with a convoluted, complicated mess, and that's not what I want for you. One of the biggest tips I can give you is to be very careful about including the phrase, "I am a good communicator." This is a loaded phrase as it sets the bar very high for your whole resume. If you have put yourself out on a limb by stating this, and then proceed to write long-winded, irrelevant, and unclear sentences, you've just demonstrated that not only do you not actually communicate well, but also that you lack insight and self-awareness. To avoid these pitfalls, it is crucial to proofread. If you are even a tiny bit unsure about a certain phrase or section, ask a friend to read it over and give you their honest opinion. Usually, if you are unsure about something, it's for a good reason. It may just need a little bit of tweaking, or you may just need a fresh pair of eyes to provide some reassurance. If you know that your resume has received the green light not only from yourself but from a third party, it can boost your confidence and faith in yourself, and that is invaluable. Proofreading is important because it's a major part of the overall presentation of your resume. This is a crucial factor in the way your employer will perceive you, not only in terms of your skills and experience, but also in terms of how you view yourself. This is a big part of resume writing which many people never tell you. So much of what you say is unwritten. When you think about it, you can only fit so much into a document designed to respond to an advertisement for a job position. As I have said previously, Your future employer or recruitment coordinator doesn't have much time to sift through a pile of resumes, and so small visual clues take on a great deal of importance. This is why it is imperative to do all of the fiddly, detail-oriented work that needs to be done in order to create the best possible bigger picture. As an illustration of this phenomenon, if you get on a plane and your meal tray is slightly dirty, you probably won't put much faith in the cleanliness of the engines or even the competence of your captain and flight attendants. It may seem out of proportion, but we tend to draw a lot of conclusions from a limited amount of information. In the job application stage, it is crucial to communicate your competence not only by what you say, but by how you say it. Be sure to print your resume on high-quality paper in white or a similar conservative color. Make sure it looks neat and the headings and font sizes are consistent. You want it to be as attractive as possible to encourage your employer to read all the way through it and to give them a good impression of you well before they have met you. Final checklist. Your name in large, clear font. Easily readable contact details. Career objective or overview, optional. Key strengths linked to relevant experiences. Employment history, no older than 5 years. Includes brief outline of company, your role, key responsibilities, key achievements. Education, no older than 5 years. Hobbies and interests, keep it brief. Inform all references of the job position and name of employer or recruiter. Proofread the whole document. No longer than 2 pages. Spell check. We have now gone over the most important criteria for a great resume, and I know that you are now well prepared. Applying for jobs is always scary, and rewriting applications can be grueling. With this resume template, you'll be sure to impress your potential employer, and my tips and tricks will help you to do this in the easiest way possible. The most important thing to remember is to be yourself. You want to write a resume that you are proud to hand over to an employer and about which you're prepared to answer questions during the interview. Contrary to some popular beliefs, employers do read resumes. This training has given you an outline of what to include to put yourself in the best light and ahead of your competition. We have attached a template resume designed for you to use exactly as it is. It follows the sections and structure of the resume outlined in this training, and as I said previously, feel free to play around with it. I have used the work examples of a retail experience in a bookshop and an internship at a professional psychological testing organization. These are just examples and should be molded to suit your needs and reflect your own experience. It's important that you deliver a document to your potential employer that you're comfortable and happy with, so take the time to customize it and make it yours. And now it's time for a job breakthrough. Thank you for watching, and I wish you all the best in your job searching journey.